Alrighty. Happy Monday, guys. Um, so if you're watching this, this is actually not the live video of my class recording. For whatever reason, the file would not convert. So I'm going to kind of redo this. Luckily, today was kind of a content-heavy day. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go through the stuff that we did in class and kind of talk about what you'll need here. I'm going to try to keep it shorter than it was in class. Okay. So here's what's going on. We're going to talk about Hero's Journey again today. So I have an example here. This right here will be another example that we did in class that I will put under the document cam and show you in a couple minutes. That'll be the bulk of this video. And then I will talk about the homework assignment so you know what it is. Okay. So I'm going to stop screen sharing here and I'm going to move over to what's linked on PowerSchool. And move this. So this is another representation of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is often represented as a circle, and for good reason, because it's cyclical. It's a cycle. It moves in a circle, right? So as you can see from the start, up top, the hero starts here. And this is all just a recap of the hero's journey stuff that we did at the end of last week. So none of this is new content, but just a refresher, right? Hero starts here. They work their way down the circle, around through this bottom and up back to the top, right? And they come back home. There's a couple important things to notice on this cycle here. And if you just Google the words hero's journey and search those, you'll get a million different versions of this chart. It's a very common thing. And when we talk about storytelling theory and structure, it's good to know, like, how does the story get structured and why does that matter, right? You'll see a line moved across the middle of it here. Sometimes it's more towards the middle, sometimes it's more towards the top like it is here, but ultimately there is a line dividing because the top half, or it's not even half, the top part represents the hero's normal, comfortable world. That is their comfort zone, right? When they go on a quest, they have to leave their comfort zone. You can see right here, this is actually step 5, crossing the threshold. That's when they leave their comfort zone. Oops. They leave their comfort zone, they face challenges, they face death and rebirth, and they climb back up. The hero's journey is largely a process by which the hero falls and stumbles all the way down to their own death, only to be reborn and climb back out of the pit, right? So notice this is the direct opposite. If this is their comfort zone, this is the complete opposite of everything that is their comfort zone. The hero's journey needs to have a character die. And it doesn't have to be literally. In fact, more often than not, it's not literal. The character dies in the sense that their old self dies and a new, better self is reborn. And that's what helps them climb back home, right? Let's look at a more specific example of this. Let me stop screen sharing here and move over to the document camera. So on PowerSchool, the assignment that's listed up there is this. It's a worksheet called the Hero's Journey Analysis Assignment. And what it is it's 2 parts. So part number 1, part A, is you're going to create a story. Write a story in your head. You're not going to physically write it. You will not physically write it. Think of a story. Come up with one in your head. And then you're going to put the events of that story on this wheel, all the way from the beginning of your story to number 1, all the way around to the end of your story at number 12. Okay? You can see the line across the middle, all that stuff. If this were a handout in class, we would do this on paper and physically write it. But because it's not, it'll be a little bit different right now. But that's part number 1. Make up a story in your head and put the events on this wheel. Step 2 is analyze it, right? Write me a few sentences, write about a half page of analysis, right? And tell me, what is the transformation that the hero undergoes? The hero should change in your story. The hero's journey demands that the character change and grow. So the question is, what transformation is that they undergo, right? How do they change? And how does that transformation take place? So this might be something like they grow from somebody who is proud to someone who is humble. And how does it happen? It happens by them doing this and them learning this, and then they do this and then they learn that, right? This is an example of it that you can look at, and it's linked on PowerSchool. The sample that I will give you right now, the story that we're going to do together, is about this, and this is the second part of it. So you'll have an example for each part. Okay. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing this online, because it can get very tricky to do it digitally, we're going to do it by hand. We're going to do it on plain old paper and pencil. So what you're going to do is, if you're watching this and you did not do this in class, you're going to get out a blank sheet of paper. Okay, blank sheet of paper, it can be lined, it can be printed paper, it does not matter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to draw the circle on it. And in this case, I'm going to use a roll of tape to help me draw the circle. It does not have to be a huge, perfect circle. In fact, it should probably be about this big. So what I'm going to do is just trace it a little bit. If you're following along at home, you can do that. And I'm going to do it all the way here. And so that's what you're going to kind of do here. We're going to draw the circle. I'm going to switch over to one that's already been made. Okay. All right. So once you have your circle, we're going to draw a line through the center of it. And so I'm going to take a straight edge here. I'm going to use, for lack of something better, I'm just going to use my phone. We're going to put it right there. And I'm actually going to do this. Let's do this in a lighter color. I'm going to do it in a smaller black. And we're going to draw the dissecting point right there. So now our hero's journey wheel is divided into two parts. Okay. Now we're going to put the tick marks on it like it's a clock going all the way down, and you'll see what this looks like as we go through. So I'm actually going to start at the top, and we're going to label these. You get a pen? This one at the very, very top, we're just going to label number 1. That's the first step of the hero's journey, right? That's what we're going to call the ordinary world, right? Which we'll talk about. We're going to leave some space. We're going to go to this point right here, because this point right here is actually step number 5. So label that one number 5, right? And so remember, you should be copying this down on a blank sheet of paper so that you have a copy of it as well. That's number 5. And then in between, obviously, we have 2, 3, and 4. And we're just going to space those out as evenly as we can. It's okay if they're not perfect. I want to highlight them so you can see them. Those are steps 2, 3, 4. Okay. The circle is going to continue, and I'm actually going to go to the next biggest point, which is the very opposite of number 1, right? And you would think, because of the way that clocks are laid out, that if there are 12 steps, then maybe 6 would be at the bottom, but it's actually not, right? Directly at the bottom is step number 8. So go ahead and label that. And that leaves 6 and 7. And again, we're just going to kind of put these on there as best as we can, evenly spacing them apart. And there we go. We're going to continue going. And the next biggest step is right here. Actually, there will be one more in between, but this step right here is actually step number 10. So go ahead and label that. Notice though, 8, we're going to need a 9, and then that's 10. There's only one step in between, right? You can put that wherever you like in the middle, throw it in there. Notice it starts off very dense and slowly becomes more spacious in between, right? Now, the hero's journey ends where it begins. In this case, that's this bit right here, right? So this is number 1, but it's also number 12, so we're going to double label that one. It's both, right? It's step number 1, but it's also step number 12. That's the first moment of your story and the last moment of your story, which means we have 8, 9, 10, we need an 11. We're going to label it. And there you go. There's a hero's journey wheel. From this point, I'm going to show you an example, to do a story that I'm going to have you copy as I do this. We're going to go through all 12 of the steps, which we can see here, 12 steps. We did this in the Hero's Journey PowerPoint, so go back and look at that PowerPoint and watch the video from last Thursday if you need more explanation on it and how it works. But I'm going to come up with a story, and I'm going to plot the events of that story on this wheel. Okay, and you're going to copy them. You're going to copy them down so that you can see. We are doing exactly what you're going to have to do on the assignment later. Right, so you're copying me as a form of note-taking. You're going to create your own later and do the same process. Right, create another circle, all that stuff. So I'm going to use a story that is actually true. Your story, when you create yours, does not have to be true. It does not have to be something that actually happened. Mine will be, because I find it actually fits very well. So this is the story of how I came to really love reading. Obviously, I'm an English teacher. I'm a big nerd for these kinds of books and things like that. I eat it up. That was not always the case. I was telling the class today that I grew up in the era of PlayStation 2 having just come out, and that was a huge game system, and I loved it. I spent every waking moment of my time playing everything that I could get my hands on, right? So when I went to school one day, this was in high school, I was given an assignment. The teacher said, hey, we're going to do book reports. Yay. Everybody pick a book and then do a book report, right? You have a couple weeks. Here you go. I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds lame. It sounds kind of boring and hard. I'd rather, I just got Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm trying to go play that. So, if we could just kind of put this on the table and not have to worry about it, that'd be great. My teacher, obviously she couldn't take no for an answer. She went over to her bookshelf, pulled a book from the shelf, put it on my desk and said, here, this is what you're going to read. She put a copy of Frankenstein on my desk. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't seem like reading is not like a me thing. Like, I don't really do that. Maybe we'll just do something else. She's like, no, this is what you're going to do. And she's like, I actually think you would really like this book. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to like it, but I'll do it because I have to. So I did it. And over the course of that, I struggled because I was not a good reader. I was a horrible reader. I had not practiced. My eyes were fatigued from playing video games all day long. And it was hard. It was very hard. But at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like this book, right? And now, granted, that didn't spark some massive change where suddenly I'm reading 24/7 instead of playing video games. At the end of the book, I still went home and played video games, right? But my mind was opened and I appreciated things. I tried new things and I liked it, right? And that's important, right? So in that sense, I grew as a person. And of course, slowly over time, I read more and more books until we reach where I am right now. We're going to plot that story on here, okay? So we're going to go through each and every one of these parts. We're going to start with part number 1, which is pretty simply the ordinary world. The hero is at home, right? So again, if you are copying this down, or if you're watching this, you're also copying this down. We're going to zoom in a bit, and I'm going to write and put some stuff up here and draw arrows. Plot point number 1, the ordinary world. We're going to say the protagonist. Excuse me. In this case, me. I'm the me as a character. I am the protagonist. You can also say the hero of the story because it's the same thing. But I'm going to say the protagonist is going to school. On a typical Monday, right? That is the first thing. That is a normal thing that happened in my world every day for 12 years, right? So it's a normal Monday. I'm just going to school. That is the typical world that I live in. Step 2, call to adventure. This is something that makes the hero, the protagonist, have to go do a thing that they probably don't want to do. In this case, this is my English teacher. So you're copying, there we go. English teacher assigns the hero a book to read. That's a call to adventure, right? I am called to read this book. Number 3, however, as we'll see as we speed through this, is the refusal. Remember, this is where the hero says, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds lame, right? I don't want to leave my comfortable world and do something that I don't want to do. And that's exactly what happens, right? protagonist, the hero, me, the protagonist of the story doesn't want to. Doesn't want to read the book. Even tries to get out of it. He's like, I don't want to do this, try something else. But of course, the story doesn't stop there, right? It can't stop there if we're going to have a story. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any more movie, any book, or things like that. This whole section takes about 15 minutes of the story, on average, if this is a movie, right? Because number 4 is the mentor, the helper, right? There needs to be a moment where somebody helps the protagonist out, where they meet someone who is older or wiser or who knows more, right? Who's going to help them on their journey and pushes them on that journey. So in this case, it's the teacher. The teacher offers help. Maybe it's the end of class. I don't exactly remember how this went down, so we're going to embellish a little bit. Maybe it's the end of the class, and I'm like, I don't really want to do this, right? And the teacher sits down and goes, look, I know it's hard. I know you don't like it. I know you don't want to, but I will be here to help you get through it, right? I will be here to push you along, to clarify things when you need help. She says, I really like this book, and I think you actually would really like this book too, right? She becomes a mentor. I become someone who is studying under someone else. I become someone who has someone to help, right? Because the next step is one of the biggest in the story. It's called crossing the threshold. Crossing the threshold is also what we call the point of no return. When you cross the threshold, you move from the familiar world to the unfamiliar world. You move from the safe and comfortable to the dangerous and uncomfortable, right? So that's what step 5 is. Step 5 is I start reading the book. Protagonist starts reading the book. That's the point of no return, right? I've committed. I'm going to do this thing now, right? I have help. I have a reason to do it. Now we're going to do it. So I have moved successfully from the comfortable area of video games and not having to read to the uncomfortable area of spending every night not playing video games and having to read. That's what that point represents. Next step, tests, allies, and enemies. This step is usually pretty long. It takes more time than something like the refusal. This is just the hero is tested. They are tried. They are put through things that are difficult, right? We want to see the hero succeed, but more importantly, right here, we want to see the hero fail, right? We need the hero to realize that they need help. They need to go back to the mentor. They need to find somebody. So in this case, I'm going to say the book was hard, to say the least. Move some of this out of the way. Here we go. Number 6, that's the tests, allies, enemies. The book is hard. I'm going to say some time passes. This is the part of the story where time moves a little more, right? Let's say a week passes. I think it was about a week. A week passes. And it's still hard. But the teacher helps. So this is the point in the story, in my actual story here, where a week is passing and I'm like, I don't get what's going on in this book. Here's why. If you've ever read Frankenstein, or when you will read Frankenstein with me sophomore year, you'll know that the book jumps perspective, right? What that means is the book starts out being told by one character, then jumps to Victor Frankenstein. And now he's telling the story. Then it jumps perspective, and now Victor Frankenstein's monster that he created is telling the story. Then it jumps back to Victor Frankenstein, and then it jumps back again. So there are 4 or 5 changes in perspective that my 13-year-old brain was not equipped to handle. So what that means is I am struggling. I'm being tested. The book is my enemy right now. The teacher offers to help, and that's a really good thing. So I go seek out help. Back when I went to high school, it wasn't called office hours or study hall. It was called tutorial, which was the same thing. Open hours, you walk in, say, hey, I need help. Can you help me? So I went in and I said, hey, I don't get what's going on. Can you please help me? And my teacher was so good about it. She was like, okay, this is what's going on. Here's how it works, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And I remember like walking out and then walking right back in the classroom like 2 seconds later, like, I still need more help, right? And my teacher was patient. She's the mentor figure here, right? She was a mentor because she was patient, because she was helpful, because she was trying to get me across this dang hero's journey, right? That's number 6. That's the hard part. Things are rough. Number 7 is the next one, and that is the approach. So once I have been tested, once time passes and I have fought and probably failed a couple times to understand what's going on, we start getting the hang of things, and eventually you make a game plan. You make a plan to finish off the rest of your quest, right? So in this case, number 7 is the book starts to make more sense. The book starts to make more sense. I'm now equipped with skills. I now have a mentor who's teaching me reading strategies and how to be a better reader. She's giving me resources. Number 7 is I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm like, all right, let's fight. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's tackle this. Because number 8 is what's also called the pit. In terms of the actual theory, it's called the ordeal. And notice things are laid out a little bit different here. It's not exactly in the center, but it is towards the bottom. The ordeal, or the pit, is the blackest night. What that means is that's the darkest moment in the story for the hero. That's where they struggle the hardest, and that's the point. That's do or die. If you think back to the other image I showed you on the screen a few minutes ago, this is where the hero dies, right? And that sounds bad, but it's not a physical death. It's a metaphorical death. Sometimes it can be physical, but if it's physical, it's always also metaphorical. And in this case, there's part of the hero that needs to die so that a new part of it can be reborn. In this case, the part of me as a character that needs to die when it reaches the pit is the part of me that was a bad, uncaring reader. The part of me that needed to go away was the part of me that did not like to read, the part of me that thought it was boring, thought it was lame, the part of me that struggled, the part of me that was self-conscious because I struggled. All of that needed to die and go away so a new, better me could be reborn, right? And as we'll see, that's what happens. That being said, there still has to be a moment where the hero hits the ground, right? Rock bottom. In this case, I reach halfway through the book. I get halfway through the book, and the perspective shifts again, right? It shifts to the monster's perspective about halfway through the book. And the story gets harder to understand. It gets harder to clarify this. Harder to understand for the hero. I'm struggling. I'm not getting it. I'm 100 pages into this book, or 75 pages, I guess, into this book, and I still don't quite get it. I'm like, this is the part where I might fail, or I might get frustrated, put this book down, and be like, I'm not doing this anymore, right? But we're gonna add more. The hero holds on. And succeeds. This is the part that took the most out of me as a reader when I was doing this. I was forced to stretch, to tear, and break so that I could grow. I was forced to have a part of me die at that moment, metaphorically. The bad reader part, the part that wanted to give up, that part goes away. And a new part of you gets born instead. Because we look at number 9, and number 9 is the reward. So notice you're asked to sacrifice, and then you're given a reward. right? Number 9 is the reward. Number 9 is I start to like this book. Once I get past the hardest part, I start to really like where this book is going. So we're going to say the hero starts to enjoy the book. Now notice too, once we finish with this pit, we start climbing up, right? This is an ascent, meaning you're going up, as opposed to descending down in tone, being, going from happy to sad. Now you're going from sad back to happy. So I'm enjoying the book. Things are getting better. I've conquered the hardest part of it. And when we reach number 10, it's what's called the road back, right? So I beat the hardest part. I'm not done with the book just yet, but I start going back, right? Part number 10 is also where there's one more thing that happens, right? There's one more challenge that the hero has to face. So yes, they faced death itself, but there's still one last test before they can go home, right? And that's what number 10 is. So for number 10, I'm going to say the ending of the book changes perspective one more time. And that was hard for me. It's hard for me to grasp how that happened. So we're going to say the ending was complex and hard for the protagonist. It was difficult for me to understand, and it was another final test. And it was the end of the book too, right? But the hero is able to finally claim victory. So I finished that last bit. I best the last challenge, and now I can go home, right? Notice the line. I'm now moving from the unfamiliar, from the dark and scary, to the familiar, right? Things are getting happier now. I'm going back home. Number 11 is let's see what I have here. It's called the atonement. This is where things start falling back into place. I start going back home, right? Number 11 is I finally finished the novel. I finally finished the novel, and here's the thing. I found that I actually really enjoyed it, right? The hero really enjoyed it, right? The atonement is like things are falling back into place and you're moving back home as a better person, right? I've been reborn. I'm a new person, so to speak, because the very last one, number 12, is called the return. This is the end of the movie. This is the end of the story, whatever it is. And it's the same point you came from, right? I go back home at the end of the day. Number 12 is simple. The assignment for this class, having to read the book for the book report, the assignment is over. And the hero has changed. Here's the other thing too. The hero has changed for the better, right? You can think of this as a spiral staircase, right? Stairs moving up and up and up and up and up like that. This is how the hero's journey works. You're not just going in a circle, you're going up higher and higher every single time, right? And this is how the story works, right? This is a story about someone who was pushed into a situation where they had to leave their comfort zone, do something they didn't want, face a harsh reality, face struggle, right? And then slowly get better, right? Slowly grow out of it and become a better person, because that's what the hero's journey is meant to do. It's meant to talk about how we struggle through things, but it's always to make us a better person. Because yes, stories are fiction, they're fake, they're made up, right? In this case, this is real. But so what, right? Why does that matter? What does it matter if we read the Odyssey and we go, oh wow, this fake man did a fake thing and became fake better. Oh, that's so great. I'm so happy for him, right? What does that matter? Here's the thing. This mirrors life. This is what life is like, right? I use this example because it's a real experience that did change my life. It changed it in a very small way, but I did this enough times where it changed it in a very big way, right? So it's a matter of you have to struggle, you have to fight, you have to bleed, you have to fight your way through this because it's always going to make you a better person, right? The key word here is that the hero has to learn. This is a process by which we learn. This is a process by which we become better people. And so this is the story that I have to present for you guys here, right? The assignment on PowerSchool, again, looks like this. So if I, as a student right now, were doing an assignment, we would have just done part A, right? That's what this is right here. Boom, done. I would take a picture of this and put it in the Dropbox. Okay. Part B has a prompt. Here's the prompt. Part B asks you, what is the transformation that the hero undergoes? And how does that transformation happen, right? So here's an example, and you can look at this on PowerSchool, or you can even pause it right now if you want to read it. But this example is about the one we just did. And it says basically the hero struggles to become just struggles to read a challenging novel in school. The protagonist transforms from a person who dislikes reading and thinks it's a boring waste of time to someone who enjoys it and grows to have a new perspective, right? To get outside of my comfort zone. That's how the hero grows. And spoiler alert, whatever story you do will probably be pretty similar as well, because that's what it is, right? It's the hero learns to get out of their comfort zone. All of this is half plot summary, half, synopsis or summary of the story. And part of it is also telling you what happens, right? This says right here, when the story concludes, the hero has grown beyond their old self, having a broader perspective and having learned new skills. Think about it. Almost every story has a character who grows and learns something new, right? Again, the hero learns something. And that's key. That's what the hero's journey should be about. So when I say, hey, let's talk about hero's journey and narrative analysis. That's what this is. It's analyzing the narrative of a story. When I say let's do that, that's great. You can throw events on a circle all day long, but it needs more than that, right? No high-ranking English scholar or critical thinker is going to look at that and go, "Wow, that's perfect. That's going to solve all the world's problems," right? It's more than that. We need to ask ourselves, so what? And that's what this question does. Is it goes, so what? What does that matter? What do we learn from it? Right? This is a story that teaches us that we should try new things, that we need to struggle and persist, that we don't do things alone, that you need someone's help, and you need to go find that help if you're going to succeed. Right? That's what the story has taught me. That's what other stories like that have taught me. That's what these kinds of stories can teach everyone. And that's what this is really kind of all about here. Right? That's what that's kind of headed at. It's about how we learn, and it pushes you to be a better learner.